order. Roll call, please.
Yeah.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
And we have a quorum. First item this morning, we'll welcome Chief Bergen to discuss radios for the police department. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. Finally get to talk about something other than marijuana. Very exciting.
There's that.
No, wanted to talk a little bit. We do need to start replacing radios. We have been putting money aside for quite a few years. But just one of these little radios is $5,500. So for us to replace all of the radios in our department, it's about $250,000. So we're sitting very well right now. We have a pretty healthy budget surplus. And we cut a lot of what we set aside for future purchases out of the 2024 budget, knowing that we have this surplus. So today what you have before you is kind of a jump start on our radio replacement. I think that $88,000 will buy about 16 radios, about 2/3 of what we need for the portables. And like I said, we do have some other funds that will be coming in 2024. Plus we do have some money set aside in capital outlay for other purchases. So today, just asking for a resolution to approve the purchase of those 16 radios at $88,000.
Thanks, Chief. We can recommend this to the council on Monday night. Thanks, Jim. Laura, question for
I
Chief?
got one question. Is there any state kind of like grants or anything to aid in the purchase?
No, when we got the radios originally, there were several grants available. So I don't think we, as a city, had to pay anything when we originally got the radios. But right now, there's really nothing out there. And everybody, these radios are supposed to last about 10 years. Like I said, we're on about year 12 or 13. And I like to try to stretch as much life as we can out of a radio. The one other thing I'll just add too is just the inflation is outrageous. It's about a 60% increase in the cost of this radio from when we purchased it. And we're seeing, just huge inflation costs in everything we buy. Cars are probably up 40% in the last 2 or 3 years. We used to pay about $33,000 for a car. I think the last order we got was about $40,000. Vehicle purchases in 2024, they're estimating around $47,000 to $49,000 for the same exact vehicle. So just a lot of inflation that's out there beyond our control. So I don't see, costs going down really ever. They might flatten out, but it's just kind of what we're dealing with right now financially.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions? Just like, is there special technology like? Are they bulletproof?
No, they are. They are like a military spec radio, so they are a little bit more rugged and durable than what the average consumer would buy. I think the other thing that drives the cost up is, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but the government kind of switched us to an 800 megahertz system. There really isn't another customer base out there other than government. So they don't have, prices go up because there's kind of a fixed market for it. So there are a few things that kind of drive the cost up for more than the average consumer.
Sure. Thanks, Chief. Just curious on that. Okay, so we have a motion to bring this to the council on Monday night. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. All right. Chief's up again with an update on mental health social worker position.
Yeah, just a couple updates on a few other things, all kind of related to mental health and substance abuse. I think the last time I came before you about the mental health social worker was on July 3rd, asking for a letter of support. I think 2 weeks ago, the county just interviewed for that position and has hired the mental health social worker. So that social worker will be paired up with one of our officers and just doing a lot of outreach into the community for some of these people that are in need. And there's been, I think maybe I talked about this before, just a really big hole, since the closure of like the state hospital that just hasn't been filled. And a lot of times we get, not so much locally, but like on a national level, criticized, well, why don't the police do more about some of these issues regarding mental health? And the reality is, you've taken away all the resources. 30 years ago, we would, take somebody to a place like the state hospital and they would get services. But as these facilities across the country have closed, there's just nowhere for these people to go. And oftentimes we have, bad outcomes. So a lot of what this position is about is just trying to get people hooked in with resources. There can be a lot of wait time to get resources. So it's also kind of a stopgap so that they have somebody that's coming in on a routine basis, seeing them, checking on them before they can get into a licensed healthcare provider. So yet no action needed. Just wanted to update the council on that. Just two other quick things related to mental health. The county just finished their mental health promotion, suicide prevention comprehensive plan. Our county has been one of the highest in the rate of suicide than any other county in Minnesota, and we've held that position for quite a few years. So on a county level, we work with public health on this particular issue, and it's just addressing some of what's causing some of the issues within our county. And the one thing I'll just from this plan just talk about briefly is mostly for men, ages 30 to 55. We really have to reduce the stigma about mental health. And I think, to start understanding that mental health is no different than your physical health. There are days when, maybe you just have to take a day off from work because you're not feeling well mentally. It could be that you need to go in, to like the walk-in clinic, for something that's going on, all the way up to the point of, you might need hospitalization for your mental health. So I think once we start to understand a little bit better as a society that, your mental health is no different than your physical health, and we have to take care of those needs as they arise throughout our lifetime, that we'll be in a better place. But, one of the big things that I pulled out of this study was just the fact that that's probably the biggest group is, males between 30 and 55 don't often, reach out for help when they need it. So, and then just the last thing that we're working on is on the county level, this time with that's with public health as well. The opioid settlement money. So county, I think our county's receiving a little over $3.5 million as a result of the opioid settlement money from the different pharmaceutical and pharmacies. And right now we're just going through the process of identifying potential uses for those funds. And those aren't one-time lump sum. It's paid out over the course of, I believe, around 10 or 15 years. So as we work through that a little bit more, maybe I'll bring back an update for you as more progress is made. But anyways, I just wanted to give you an update. Sometimes we come to you asking you for things, and you don't often get to hear what the results of those actions are. So that's
Thanks.
all I have.
Thanks, Chief. I know that, thanks for your leadership on the mental health issue. And it's not an easy issue, but it's one that obviously affects our community, and it's necessary. So thank you. Thanks for your leadership on that.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we will welcome Gail Hedstrom to give library policy updates. Morning, Gail.
Good morning. Thank you. So I've submitted a number of policies that we have just been reviewing and making updates to, and we just are asking, making a recommendation that you approve those policies that the library board has brought forward. Our process is that we are going through each and every policy. The policies before you today are actually statutory policies, which means the state has said libraries need to have these policies in place. We do have most of them in place, but we're just tweaking them, updating them for the times. Some have been in place since the 90s. We just want to make sure that the language is appropriate. So if you have any questions about any of those, please just let me know. And we will continue to do this throughout the year, and we'll do it every year. And I don't want to deter people from serving on the library board, but we do read policies and we do read a trustee's manual every meeting aloud.
Thanks, Gail. Anyone have any questions? Would someone like to offer the motion to bring these policies to the
I'll offer
council on
the motion.
Monday? Thanks,
I have a
Scott.
question.
Tom, thank you. Go ahead, Scott.
Good morning, Gail.
Good morning.
Not so long ago, the library made the choice to drop late fees. And as I saw that, it was basically an experiment, you might say. It was something to try and see how it worked. And I guess I'm wondering, how is that working? Is that an effective thing, or is it something that is being considered, further? I just was curious about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. This is a wonderful, it's a wonderful topic to talk about. This is the first year that the federal government has said in library annual reports, the question was asked, does your library charge late fees? And that's because so many libraries across the country have dropped the practice of charging late fees because it's been recognized as a deterrent to use, especially for people who may have income insecurity, which is obviously, we want to break that barrier to service down. So when I look at the numbers, it's just amazing. Between libraries of all sizes, late fees typically made up about 1% of their budget. And that's not small change, and we don't diminish that. So for us, that would have been about $10,000. But my coworkers and I, at the time we dropped it, we decided that we would make those cuts in our budget to make up that difference. We wouldn't ask for more money, but we would figure out ways to save that money. And we do charge lost fees. So if you lose or damage a book, there is a fee for that. And we've noticed that that fee pretty much covers what we were taking in for fines. So we're going to continue with that as long as possible and see it as successful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Any other questions for Gail? So there's a motion to bring our updated policy recommendations to the council on Monday night. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Gail. Next, we'll welcome Chamber of Commerce Director Lisa Workman to go over some economic development tool survey results. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and staff for inviting the Fergus Falls Chamber to share valuable information at this Committee of the Whole meeting. We appreciate your willingness to take the views of the Fergus Falls business community into consideration. One of the Chamber's strategic priorities is leverage government liaisons. And one of the ways we accomplish this is give the business community a unified voice through surveys. We welcome the opportunity to share the results of our economic development tools survey with you today. Now, as many of you know, economic development strategies was a hot topic at last week's Fergus Falls Refresh State of the Community. That was an event held at the Bigwood Event Center. It was a collaboration of the City of Fergus Falls, Greater Fergus Falls, the Fergus Falls Chamber, Visit Fergus Falls, and Otter Tail County, all of whom play a key role in growing our local economy. Now, Greater Fergus Falls takes the lead in recruiting new businesses. In addition, they work with the City of Fergus Falls Community Development to provide technical assistance to businesses looking to relocate or expand. The Chamber plays a significant role in driving our local economy by collaborating with partners to support and grow established local businesses. Driving local economic growth is another one of our top 5 strategic priorities. Now, due to recent business growth and expansions here in Fergus Falls, We surveyed our members about the local economic development tools and incentives that are available to them. We gathered feedback from the local businesses, and the results are important for decision-making elected officials like yourselves. The survey provided a summary of the tools that were available, such as economic development loans, the Minnesota Investment Fund, or MIF, the revolving loan fund, and tax increment financing, along with SBA loans and more. We had a more than a 30% response rate of our chamber members to a simple one-question survey. And so we asked them, how important is the use, availability of the incentives that were listed in the survey for the overall economic vitality of communities in Fergus Falls, Otter Tail County, and West Central Minnesota? An overwhelming majority, 90.66% of chamber members stated that economic development tools were very important to our overall economic vitality. A few business owners did share some comments, including these are their thoughts that we're sharing with you. A property tax holiday for new and/or existing businesses may prove more powerful for growth against the above-mentioned programs. The funds are too tightly guarded. Seems tough to get access to the funds. These are great opportunities for small business. However, Fergus Falls loan programs being tied to city council approval seems like they could choose only certain types of businesses that align with their views. Others said it would be nice if there was more financial support for childcare, and several mentioned that they were not aware of all of these opportunities. So in addition to sharing information with them about them and gathering feedback for you, we looked at it as an educational opportunity to share additional resources. Since we received the results of the survey, we did connect several businesses to Greater Fergus Falls for technical assistance of those businesses that were interested in learning more about the financial tools. And we were able to share, or we plan to share, all of the resources and links to Greater Fergus Falls Community Development, West Central Initiative, Otter Tail County, and the state of Minnesota. Those resources, those will soon be on the Chamber's new website at fergusfalls.com. We will be rolling out a new website before the end of the year, so we're excited about that. We'll have some fresh new information on it. Again, as the small business government liaison, we're a respected source of information for local businesses. We give small businesses a voice, and we advocate on their behalf. We appreciate this opportunity to be a conduit for feedback for the city of Fergus Falls by gathering input from the local business community. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Lisa. We appreciate the relationship with the local business community and the partnerships that have been developed between the Chamber and Greater Fergus Falls and the city that were highlighted at the Refresh. That was a very worthwhile program, and I think that was very successful, so congratulations.
Great event, a nice partnership, agreed.
Congratulations. Anyone have any questions for Lisa?
Well, not so much necessarily questions, but comments. Just obviously, when you do your new website, there's a link, obviously, to the city loan programs.
Yes,
If we can make sure that's on there. And
absolutely. That was one of the requests that we got from the survey,
Yep.
is that the survey software that we used didn't allow us to include links within the question, so, but that will be there.
And I would say that, like, I could speak obviously from a city loans that are available. The funds aren't tightly guarded. There's very rarely do any loans that come to the city get disapproved. Typically the city is the lender of last resort, the bridge kind of gap. So when it comes to the city making loans, we are the last kind of lender. And so if something goes wrong with that loan or that business that going forward, then the city would be out of pocket. But we make loans at lower interest rates to help bridge that gap, to make that business successful. I would say that from a diversity point of view, it's a very, very diverse portfolio of what we lend to. And it's everything from, doing up a storefront to laying down blacktop to remodeling an office to buying equipment for packaging something to buying machines that will embroider clothing. There's a lot of things that the city has funded over the course of the year. or the years. So, and the only reason that those loans come to the council, if it's greater than $75,000, then a public hearing is required, and that's a state statute. That's not a city statute. And one of the other things that I know puts people off applying for those loans is confidentiality. And obviously the city has a committee that looks at those loans, and in general it does not go any further. But obviously, there is things that people, in terms of, we ask for people's tax returns, and we want a business plan. And that's obviously, a fiduciary responsibility that we have to safeguard the city's loan programs. So, but we're more than willing. I mean, we, as I say, literally, we look at anything from fixing a roof to, I mean, literally, there's nothing that we don't turn down. Very, very rarely do we turn a loan down. It's only if obviously the person, sometimes the person will withdraw their application as we ask for more and more information.
Absolutely agree,
So-
100%. In fact, the chamber was a recipient of financing through the city of Fergus Falls when we completed our renovation in 2018. And if not for the city, I don't know if that would have happened. And we are so thankful today that that has been completed, which brings up another point. The city also funds and provides these funds to nonprofit organizations in the city too. So that's something that not a lot of people were aware of.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lisa. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, Al.
Well, on your fourth bullet point here, when it says council approval, seems like they could choose only certain types of businesses that align with their views. Could you be more specific on that?
Well, so these are comments taken from business community,
Right.
members of the community, not my own opinion.
I understand that.
And that's exactly, I just relaying word for word what they stated in the survey
Was
as
there
a
any-
comment.
Was there any kind of a meeting or discussion after the survey that you guys
Our
had?
board of directors looked at the results and decided that the best mode of approach to present the information was to present it to city council first before we share it with the rest of the world.
It just seems really open-ended that we don't really know what the meat we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And then also too, with the childcare, I remember growing up with kids, it was tough. Childcare was very tough. What would be your thoughts as far as extra money for childcare?
I think what people are looking for and what I'm hearing is that enhancements for childcare facilities. And I know Otter Tail County has really taken the lead on some of those childcare grants. One of the things that we can be too is a conduit for sharing information. And like I said, we were able to connect some businesses with some of the resources to answer questions. Of course, with an anonymous survey, you get honest answers and honest feedback, but we don't always know who to attribute it to and who to follow up with. Does that answer or help?
Yep, that did it.
Any other
Anything else?
Questions for Lisa? Well, we appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing this information.
Thank you very
Lisa.
much.
Have a nice day. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is a partial release of the permanent easement at 1010 North Frontier Drive, and we'll call on our city engineer, Brian Ubarro.
Hey, good morning, Your Honor, and members of this council. Yes, the owner of a building located at 1010 North Frontier Drive is planning a building addition onto his existing facility due to business growth. In general, the project consists of adding two 20-foot by 53-foot building additions attached onto the existing building on both the west and east sides of this building. If constructed, the east building addition would encroach onto a publicly owned permanent utility easement. On the projector before you, I'm just showing the subject property. There's a little yellow hatch, solid hatch, and it shows existing building up kind of in the northeast portion of this property. That's the subject area we're referring to. Because of this encroachment, the owner is requesting easement release of approximately 21 feet by 55 foot. Staff, we've reviewed this request, and we don't have, there's some adjacent utility means, but nothing that we pose as any interference with this building addition, therefore we have no objection. Previous requests similar to this have been executed by resolution. The owner of this property, Baja Properties, will be responsible for all costs associated with preparing the necessary documents and the recording fees. So at this time, I'm requesting a resolution directing myself and the city attorney to execute the partial release of this permanent utility easement. And I'll open up to any questions you might have.
Thanks, Brian. Can we get a motion on the floor, bring this to the council on Monday? Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Brent. Questions for Brian? Yeah, Scott, please.
Brian, you referred to adjacent utility mains. Have we got underground water or sewer or something there already, or no?
Generally, storm sewer.
Storm
Pretty shallow,
sewers?
yes,
So any other, water, sewer, whatnot, that would be out in Frontier Drive or on the street?
correct,
And there wouldn't be any likelihood we'd be going through this area with anything like that?
correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Scott. Other
So,
questions?
so there's no plans to do anything, that obviously, if it's a building, I mean, we've had a lot of cables that have got buried lately, that use trenching machines. Will we still be able to trench something if we need to?
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks.
Thanks, Anthony. Other questions? We have a motion to bring this recommendation to the council on Monday night. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Up next is a downtown riverfront Phase 2 East Block site improvement discussion of a fence. And again, we'll call Brian Navarro.
Yes, thank you again. Yeah, the downtown riverfront project, Phase 2, continues to make satisfactory progress. However, Mother Nature is, as it's kind of showing, setting in right now as we speak. Recently, concerns were brought forward about options to address potential safety barriers between the splash pad users and the existing riverbank slope. Although code does not require a physical barrier, green space separation between the splash pad and the riverfront top is proposed as in the current plans. But I looked into this concern, and I requested pricing just to evaluate for a fence option along the top of the riverbank. If we can turn to another exhibit here, I just want to show you the proposed location, please. This right here is showing the two options, decorative fence being one and a split rail, cedar split rail fence being another option. But if we can turn to, is there another, scroll down, please. Right here. Yes, this is a bird's eye view of the project. I just want to show you, this is a splash pad area with a pergola and everything. This would be green space. The proposed fence is just extension along the top of the riverbank here, about approximately 195 feet. I just want to note, though, a fence was included in bid alternate 2. That was a continuation of the riverfront trail. However, that included a fence too, but that was not approved at the time, hence the fence was not included. So the three options I've noted is a decorative steel fence, similar to the fence installed in Phase 1, and also top of the retaining wall that they just Comstock recently installed at a price of about $47,560. The second option is a wood cedar split rail fence at a total price of $17,315. Or the third option I'm presenting is just monitor use and decide at later dates. Just want to talk council, see how they want to proceed. With either option, sufficient budget contingency is there to proceed with either option. So at this time, I'm requesting a resolution accepting Comstock's proposal for a decorative steel fence or a wooden split rail fence. And I'll open up to any discussion.
Thanks, Brian. I'm trying to remember, this was brought up, I remember it being brought up, but I don't remember exactly. Was it one of the council questions? Just, how did we start talking about this? Was it just someone asked about the barrier between the splash pad and the river?
Yeah, I believe there was some from, if I recall, Senior Center that brought some concern forward and everything as well.
Okay.
So I just want to know between the pergola, the green space area, yes, it is rather steep where we did a retreat which were existing. We have not disturbed that area. It's about a 1 to 4 in the green space from the pergola as we get to the proposed fence site. So, but like I said, I understand, and
Yeah.
therefore I just getting pricing. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss. And, we have a park here at City Hall. I don't want to diminish the need. If there's a need for a safety fence, I think we need to put a safety fence in. I just wonder how we determine that, if it wasn't required at the beginning. We have a river walk that, kids and families are on all the time. We have a park here. I just want to, I don't want to just throw a fence up just for the sake of throwing a fence up. I mean, if there's a safety, how do we get to the determination of if obviously we're gonna have more kids in close proximity to the river? Yeah, Jim?
I personally like the metal fence. There's gonna be a lot of young kids around there, and that wood fence isn't gonna stop them from doing anything. I think for our own safety and their safety and everybody's safety, we need a metal fence.
Is that a motion to bring that?
That's a motion.
Motion recommendation for the metal fence to the council?
I'll second that. I have a comment.
Yeah, please, Scott.
Brian, on the map that you've got on the left side there as that existing, or as the concrete, sidewalk, or I suppose it's a sidewalk that comes down to that circle and then goes over to the pergola.
Yep.
Is there a fence along the side of that sidewalk already as a part of the plan? And then this is an extension of it, or is there no fence on that sidewalk there?
Currently in that vicinity, it's a very lessened slope. There's a bridge above a bling wall. There has a barrier that protrudes up about 2 feet and everything, but it's pretty general slopes as well. So to answer your question, yes, it would start near that wall and be a continuation to the east.
Okay. I was trying to see how this would basically tie into, the existing stuff on the other side of the street. So if the fencing basically looks like it continued, as Jim suggested, with that metal fence, which I would support.
If you can see my pointer and everything right here as well, that's Court Street
Yep.
as well. The bridge, it does have the railing on top of that as well. So it's a pretty enclosed area. It's triangular with this wing wall too as well. That doesn't protrude. It's about 2 to 3 foot protrusion above our existing grade. So
Oh, so the wing wall you're talking about is that horizontal line,
Yes.
that line there? Okay, I see.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Laura?
So I think for me, I need to know financially where we're at with that contingency.
I don't have that number in for me. I remember reviewing it and everything. I think we're approximately about 30% into it right now. So, but I can.
For Monday night, you can have that information as far as how that affects
Certainly.
the contingency, and
Certainly.
it's a $47,000 addition, is that what you said for the
For
steel?
the decorative steel.
Decorative steel, okay.
And the only reason we were bringing it forward at this time, now that Mother Nature has changed, we were hoping to get some of these foundations in.
Sure.
If it was a decorative option yet this fall, and then also lead time for decorative fence is about 6 weeks, so.
Certainly.
But I can certainly bring you those numbers.
And we'll have that on Monday night. Thanks, Brian. Yeah. Al?
Number one, thank you for options. I think the taxpayer deserves an option. I like your option number 3, just due to the fact that we don't know what's going to happen over there yet. And we've had people by the river, as the mayor had mentioned, for many years now. And yes, it's a higher grade, but people are going to be a little bit more aware of that too. We keep spending money. We've done 71,000 on that project already. That was an overage, if I remember correctly, and now we're looking at another, is that 47,000 if it's a metal fence? What's our top number on that? Do you know that, Brian, or you can get back to it Monday is fine.
If I may, Councilmember, top number, meaning our
For,
budgeted
yeah,
contingency?
yes.
I can bring that Monday. Yep.
Okay, because I'm just kind of curious on that, because we're kind of starting to travel up there, and that's my concern, and we don't exactly know what is going to, what the need is, if it's necessary or not. I'd hate to throw $47,000 at something that we really don't need to. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Kramer. All right, so we have a motion and a second to bring this to the council as a recommendation for the decorative steel fence, and then we'll bring some more information into the conversation on Monday night. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
All right.
That motion carries. 5-2. That motion carries. All right, thank you, Brian. Moving along. We'll have a landfill demolition cell expansion project update. We have Houston Engineering, but we'll start off with our city engineer, Brian Navarro.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. For some that might not know, the city of Fergus Falls owns and operates a Class 1 demo landfill. A few years ago, we started expansion of the larger cell, which would be 3A. That is coming up to capacity. We're now looking at to move to our next cell expansion, considering 3B. But because of this, I requested Dennis from Houston Engineering, their retained consultant for the Fergus Falls landfill. He's got a PowerPoint presentation just to talk about landfills in general. Hopefully we don't get too much, but he's here to answer any questions and everything. Also, Bill has a little utility rate, demo rate analysis too he'd like to go over, with this as well. So upon conclusion, the requested action would be to accept Houston Engineering's professional services agreement for design and construction administration in an amount of $196,600. But I'm also going to suggest too, based on this topic matter as well, that perhaps if the city council, I want to just recommend if they want to table it for further discussion as well. So just want to have that as an option for this council. We can have more discussion, but I just wanted to bring the new self-construction forward to the city council. So at this time, I'm just going to turn it over to Dennis from Houston Engineering.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian, Mayor, council members. As Brian stated, I want to give a presentation really on, we're going to cover a fair amount of ground here, and I'll try to do it in as quick as time as possible, but give you an understanding of your facility, really kind of the state of the state and where we're at from a regulatory end, and what could be next steps for your facility. So right now you're looking at a photo. This would have been about 2018 of your current cell. So you drive out there now. It's obviously not going to look like this. You've been operating in it, but this is what it looked like before you initiated operations. So you have a unique facility in that there's a lot going on. You have a closed facility that on the top of the screen there was closed in 2011. A lot of operations took place there. I mean, this is really a legacy facility in that it was an open dump, a burning dump. There was an ash monofill, a lot of things going on there. The decision was made in around the 2000 era there that you would shift operations to the south and close that northern portion. So you have a closure agreement that is pretty unique in the state, that you would separate those facilities, and we'll talk a little bit later about why you did that. Apparently you pressed the button too many times to go ahead. You have a current permit which is due up in 2026. So we worked pretty difficult process back during the 2015 era. Really the class 1 C&D demo disposal world. I mean, we're at a watershed moment here in how that waste is going to be handled in Minnesota. You are a unique facility in that you are in a clay environment. Now that is not typical of really many, if not all of the other facilities in the state. There's only a handful, literally 3, that would be considered in a clay environment. That necessitated the need to have a liner at the time. So you could have chosen at the time to do groundwater monitoring, but it was, your northern facility, the one that's closed, there is some contamination issues. You are in a corrective action. That would have been a difficult road to permit, considering you have impacts there already. So it was chosen back then to go with a liner system. So it's the compacted clay liner and then the sand drainage layer. So you collect leachate. You are like an MSW landfill in that you are a dry tune. You place waste, you regulate, you transport the leachate out of it, you manage it like it would be an MSW facility. When we did the permit renewal, there's some forecasting that needs to take place. What you're looking at is really a ghost plan of what the facility would look like. You are in this cell currently. This would be the next cell. You can see there's a lot of life at this facility. There's roughly 100 years of life here. We had forecasted roughly 14,000 yards per year as an annual disposal rate. You're slightly less than that. That trend has been around 9,000. So you're filling up slower than we had anticipated. You can see here we would have come back and talked about, say, phase 3A, 2021. That's a closure date. You're still operating in it today. So the PCA, as I mentioned earlier, we're really at this watershed moment. The PCA has a drive from a state level that they want to really reduce and diminish how this waste is handled. You can see their hierarchy there, the reduce, reuse, recycle, with landfilling being the least preferred option. Now, that may be, a great way to think about how to manage waste, but in practicality, it's really difficult to administer. So that's especially so, really outside of, say, a really large metropolitan area. That's really probably where some of the disconnect is in these policies, is that it might be great for a city. When we get further outstate, it becomes more difficult to reduce and reuse. There's also, a lot of interest on unlined landfills and really what their impacts are, to groundwater. So for a long time, these facilities were known as, inert. And what we're finding out is some of the materials that were placed in here aren't exactly as inert as we thought, and there are some groundwater impacts that these facilities are developing. The MPCA does have a framework of rules. It is very old, it is very dated. There has been talk for roughly 20 years that they would get to a rulemaking process where they would level the playing field and identify a consistent set of rules for all facilities. They really kicked the can down the road back in 2010, and they put together guidance. Guidance is a quasi-rule. It is not written in rule. It's you follow it, and it's this quasi-rule, and that's been the state of the state, since about 2010. But they're currently in a rulemaking process, really as we speak, and this rulemaking process is to make C and D demo landfills more like an MSW, where the facilities are lined. They do manage leachate. There is some financial assurance requirements. You're taking in dollars as part of the operation to accommodate closure. And then, restrictions on where facilities can be placed. So from a high level, you guys have been lined. You've been lined for, 2018 here. You're really a model for the state. There are not many facilities that are lined. There's only a handful. Granted, that's to the uniqueness of your clay environment, but the trend is that, or at least the state wants, facilities to be like you. There just aren't many that are like you right now. On the groundwater, impacts, there is quite an effort to bring this PFAS situation to light. These chemicals, these are forever chemicals. These have shown up, they're everywhere. Think of like cookware that has like a Teflon. There's been a lot of work that's been done in the East Metro in terms of contamination, and they're finding that this PFAS, these contaminants, are everywhere. There's a lot of impacts at landfills. They're finding them in groundwater monitoring wells, and it's partly why the PCA has this interest to tie this with unlined facilities. That there's this, there's this direct or potential for this direct impact. So that is ongoing. That is hitting a lot of sectors, not just solid waste. I'm sure the city is dealing with it on their, water and wastewater side as a multi-pronged approach from the PCA to regulate this and eventually remediate it. But it's very early in the process. So this watershed moment, we are now 30 years past the framework of its RCRA Subtitle D. It's the foundation of how landfills for MSW are developed. So it would have been around 1994. And this community, not like any other, probably had a group of people sitting in this room in the lead up to 1994 deciding what they would do with their MSW. Now at the time, those were large costs for people to develop facilities, to line them, to manage leachate. And a number of them closed. So your facility, you had an ash monofill, you had a burner, and you closed. You now have a transfer station, and you put your MSW waste somewhere else. That's the impact of regionalization. Fast forward these 30 years, this is really now the demo world is at that same spot, in that if we have these issues, these groundwater impacts, we want to line facilities. Some of these costs to operate these facilities will be, exorbitant for some facilities, and they will close. So, the PCA from a regulatory end is really forecasting this. Do facilities close? Do they become a regional facility? Do they continue to operate to provide that level of service? Do they transfer C and D? So, that'll be, a story that develops probably over the next decade. But you're at the beginning of that with really the model of what the facility is. And will you continue to operate, or will you transfer? So as Brian mentioned, we are in that cell, that phase 3A, but what's next? So you are underrunning at 14,000. The facility will reach that full build out in November of 2025. So you're about 70% full in that cell. So, the decisions, we're in the lead up to that, decisions need to be made on, do you want to develop the next cell or not? If you put together and add that to the, the next cell, you can see what that gives you from a life perspective at your current disposal rate. Granted, less than what we had forecasted, but gets you out to that, 2022, 23, 2032 mark.
Just a question there, just for clarity, you probably mentioned it and I probably missed it, but is 3B lined and permitted currently?
So your facility, yes, if I were to go back to one of them slides, the PCA will permit 15 years of footprint and 10 years of capacity.
Okay.
So you are permitted. They recognize basically the entire 3 series. We did it in series. We did 3, 4, and 5 is an odd one because it's just it isn't a box.
Sure.
So yes, you are permitted the entire 3 series and to build 3B.
Got it.
And that 3B, that does not include, if there is a rulemaking process, that has to be enacted, established. You can construct 3B without, you already have a liner system. There'll likely be some groundwater monitoring, which you don't have. I mean, that was the choice that was made back in 2015. You're not going to do groundwater monitoring. You're going to
Line it, yeah.
This is a schedule which would put out really, dovetailing your permit and where we're at right now. So, we're at fall of 2023. The permit expires at 26. If you start backing up dates when the PCA wants to see documentation, really if you chose to build 3B, it would be in the city's best interest to do that prior to a permit renewal effort and any new rules that would be subject to. Now's the get it into the old rules, which will likely be less, or less restrictive.
When we built the cell that we have, they were just doing new rules at that time, wasn't that how it was? And it took us forever to put everything together to even get a cell built.
We were the first.
You're the
Yeah.
first.
Reinterpretation though.
That's the really the conundrum is that in lieu of rules, the MPCA is regulating by permit. So it's difficult to have that, I guess fair is probably not a word that you should mention, but to balance the playing field, that's really difficult because they are currently regulating facilities based on individual permit. And that makes it difficult. I'm sure, Bill's going to talk at some point.
I'm
here
not
about
sure
rates.
they're always fair.
Yeah. Maybe consistent's a better word. There's not a lot of consistency in the system when there isn't some, common standard. It's left to interpretation of the regulators, which aren't, that aren't the same from site to site or facility to facility. This is an engineering estimate of what the effort for 3B is. We're in some odd economic times. You saw on some of the other slides, you could build this cell in 2025. I guess I'm reluctant to give estimates out to 2025 just considering, inflation and such. So all the numbers in here are based on a 2024 number. We have done a small boring effort. There was some unsuitable materials that were discovered with phase 3A. We wanted to make sure that didn't happen here. So we were able to do some boring and remove some of the muck excavation that was included in the last one. I think I forecasted that, just some of those unsuitable materials, the uniqueness of where you are, just this, the glacial till, it's predominantly clay. There's, sand seams and rivulets that, are draining. They're very difficult to find with a boring effort when you don't precisely know what you're looking for. We have knowledge of your site and knew what we were looking for in this go around. So Borings were successful in that we didn't really find any of these unsuitable materials. There's likely no change to what the master plan would have been. We would have forecasted for the cell. We did the permit renewal almost a decade ago. Some more water. That was a challenge with the last project. So, but back to our estimated timeline here. We have opportunity here to get this. If you wanted this to be a 2024 project, that is still a possibility. The PCA does take quite a long time to review things, so we couldn't wait too long and miss that window. You could do 2025, but like I said earlier in the slide, you're full at the end of 2025, likely estimated. And if you want to risk the last project, we really got close up against full closure of the last cell and bringing the new one online. That was a very tight window. This is our engineer's services estimate. It includes both engineering design and construction management services. We utilize some staff from the city of Fergus Falls, very knowledgeable staff, and understand how landfills are developed. We are not full-time on the construction end. It's really a partial effort, leveraging your guys' own internal knowledge and expertise. That really puts us at a decision moment for the city, and really what the city wants to do in terms of continuing operations on site. Understanding that this rulemaking process, it's very likely other facilities are going to be like you. I think the question is, how long will it be before they're like you?
Thank you. I know that the tax levy committee, along with city staff, has started to talk about the likelihood of the city continuing operations at this site, what it looks like for regionalization. There's a lot of big questions. I mean, it's an expensive operation to run, and so with the county, that's something that we continue to discuss
Through a few slides of that, so.
today.
Now,
Right now. Oh, sorry.
when
Go
you're
ahead.
ready.
I thought we were talking about. I'm ready. I'm just talking. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Lynn will pull.
But are there
up
any-
the screen.
Any questions before? Let's let Bill get his slides, and we can ask any questions at the end.
Yeah, don't go away, because the questions will still come.
I think one of the questions where obviously the county has oversight over all kind of garbage, don't they? I mean, because we pay the county a fee for garbage. How do they fit in with this?
So counties, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Counties have ultimate responsibility for solid waste within the county, I believe. Is that
Yep.
right, according to Minnesota state statute?
The PCA and the county permits us, however, we own and operate the
Yeah.
facility.
So do we need county involvement in our demo kind of pit? I know, like our municipal waste, obviously, all goes through the transfer station and goes to Gwynedd, North Dakota.
And over to the perm incinerator.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, really, the PCA carries the big stick. I mean,
Right.
you work your way through the regulatory process. I mean, counties typically don't go against.
They're just a conduit or
Just
consent.
consent, right? Okay.
Okay, so everything we've heard there, now we're going to dovetail that into what does that mean for the landfill operations and the rates we charge and the finances of that. So our current trend, of course, we own and operate this fully lined cell. We just went through how we're in 3A, reaching that capacity in 25. We have bonds outstanding of $955,000 that we still owe on that, on the demolition cell part of that. Now, we bonded because we put in a leachate collection system and all that pumping and everything that will serve, the greater site. Now, if we go forward into this expansion, I don't want to bond for that because that's an 8-year capacity. So we need to make that up in the 8 years. Construction costs for this next one, $1.1 million. That would include that estimate you saw just on a previous slide, plus any of the design costs and soft costs, right, Brian? That's where we come up with 1.1 million. Then 3B is projected to reach that capacity in 2032, we heard. Continued expansion of this site. It's going to result in increases then in our demo rates, and we'll go through that. Regionalization, we had a slide on that as well, so we'll talk about that a bit more. So our current operations, you can see in 2019 through 2023 forecast. 2019, the expenses went up greatly because depreciation was included in there. We built that new 3A, we're depreciating that as we fill it, and then we're adjusting rates throughout that process, to make that profitable and to keep us breaking even is the goal. Plans to come there, you can see if we do that in 2024, that $1.1 million project, what we're just talking about here, then again out in 2032, I inflated that number 5% a year to get up to $1.6 million. What that will be, we don't know, but I'm building in 5%. We are seeing inflation everywhere in the city. I mean, there's nothing we don't touch or operate that hasn't inflated, so we have to build that in. And then we have closure, a partial closure of 3A and 3B out in 2033, we're projecting. So if we didn't do any revenue increases, and this is similar to what we look at in our other utility funds, the demo then would, you can see this. We're looking at putting in a rate increase in 24. That's why we get more profitable in 24, or we are going to look at that, but here we maintain profit in 24, but look at how the change in net position drops down negative every year, that purple line going below the line. That's if we do not change demo rates, but we make these large investments that we need to recoup in 8 years. So that's why if you don't increase, we start seeing a downward trend. Okay, if we look at the cash we have in that fund right now, we're just around $2 million. Okay, we do the project, we spend cash, 1.1 million coming out, there we drop down to, to about that $1 million mark. And this is with no increases in revenue and demo rates again. So we are building some during that time out to 2032, then we decrease again when we spend $1.6 million out in 2032, and look at where the cash balance winds up in 2033. Negative. Obviously, that is not an option, but we wanted to show you if we don't change rates. Now, you'd say, why are we actually increasing in this period if we're not changing rates? Between the 3B build and the 3C, 3B and 3C, right? So I'm saying that right. I'm building in that inflation factor into the expenses. So remember, it's costing us 1.1 million now, 1.6 million out in 2032. That gap, it's a $550,000 gap I'm building in. I'm expensing that each year so that we build up cash so the cash is there. That's in that number. So trying to cover that expenses, an additional like $68,000 a year. That's really not an expense, but we want to cover that so the cash is there. Otherwise, we're going to just continue to fall behind with inflation. So this is no revenue increases. We build in that inflation and we still spend all the cash in the fund just on the demo side. So then if we put in revenue increases, you can see the change in net position. We get down to that. That's hovering around the break-even mark, right? We see that. That's kind of where Sandy and I were looking at this. What do we need to do to cover our costs? We're not here to make money just to make money. We're here to break even, cover our cost of this operation. Okay, then the cash balance with that, we're starting at the same point, just over 1.9 million, so around that 2 million. We do the spend down, construct the cell. Remember, we built in the inflation, and now we're building in rate increases as well. Goes up to, 2.5, 2.6. We spend that down in 2032 for the 1.6, and we're still, just below 1.4 in that fund. And what would those rates need to be? Here we can see a history of that. Back in 2017, we were at $15.40. We have raised over time. We're currently at $30.40. So you see that in that 2023. Looking at projections here, we would need to jump to $33.40 in 2024 to start bridging that gap, up to $39.40 when we're fully operational with the new $40.40 and $42.40 as we build that over. So we're doing a full projection out through 2033 to look at this life cycle of the next phase. Oops. So when we look at that, how does that compare? For instance, Otter Tail County, if you went over to Henning, it's $18 a cubic yard right now. Again, they don't have a lined cell with a leachate collection system. We just heard through that, so I won't reiterate that, but that's the predicament we're in. If we're going to stay in this business, again, we would have to truck waste quite a ways away. What do we do? Here's what the rates would be. Otter Tail County has several years of capacity left before they would have to change, correct?
If the rules are enacted, they would have to change. The PCA has given them a 4 to 7 year window. It's
Okay.
actually, depending on how they will actual close, if they go to more expensive geomembrane cover liner, they'll give them up to 7, with the current thinking, they give them almost 7 years to close, so that they can do a similar analysis to this to catch up, to be able to afford to just close the old facility. If they choose to do an earthen cover, which is, currently what you have, we have for, Fergus, that'd be a tighter window in roughly 4 years. So, yeah. As Bill's saying, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of turmoil here in the C&D waste community when these rules are enacted. So this watershed moment is truly a watershed moment.
And we were just paved the way. We were the first one in the state of Minnesota to do this. We've had these discussions before when we went to $24 to $30. So that's where we're at, and that's why Brian also said we have the recommendation here, if you want to just move forward, but you also don't have to do that today. We can chew on this a bit more, but we do have to make some decisions. We can't wait too long, right? And but we wanted to show you the whole picture of what that means.
Yeah, ultimately, I think the question is what is it to the taxpayers of the city? What would it look like if the county, the county ultimately, as Anthony was saying, has ultimate responsibility for solid waste. So if we didn't operate that site, what does that mean for the rates of the site, ultimately for, so have we had conversations with the county?
Yes, we have. So over even the last 2 or 3 years, staff has met with county staff to discuss this in the future of this. Just recently, in the last 2 months, we met with staff again, and then with county commissioners as well, just to give them a heads up. This is what the predicament we're in. I have no answers on that. Of course, Chris McCont from the county is very knowledgeable in all this, and he's great to work with as well. But this is the City of Fergus Falls asset. This is what we own. Again, we have debt outstanding on that landfill facility. So also as a side note, so Sandy and I built out these projections, this model through 2033. We have also sent it over to Houston Engineering, so someone from your office is reviewing it as well, because I wanted a second set of eyes saying, what am I not thinking of? What am I missing? So they're reviewing our analysis as well to kind of see, are we doing it right? Am I missing? I'd love it if I'm missing something that would help us, but we'll talk with them too.
So,
Are we losing waste going to Henning rather than coming here? Do we know that?
We're not seeing a big drop in waste. When we look at it, 2020 was a big increase because people were home cleaning out, getting rid of their demo debris. Then it kind of came back down. 2022, we were up. 2023, we're down a bit. We're not seeing quite as much coming in. Again, a lot of this is demolition debris. So yeah, the residents, you're going to bring something out from your house and whatnot, but also it's really contractors doing construction projects. And of course, the cost that we charge gets passed on to the consumer through the contractor. They're going to pass that on in their bids as well. But so a lot of what goes out there is certainly construction project debris. When we did the demolition up at the Regional Treatment Center, that did not go into our cell. That went into a specially permitted cell away. So just, that question has come up now and then, if that.
The one thing before we get into this in much, I'd like to find out on Henning and all the comparable demolition landfills to find out what their life cycle is like. I mean, when is Henning, estimating that they're going to fill up? When is the other Otter Tail one going to estimate they're going to fill up? Because then, because right now, I mean, we're not losing, I don't think, a lot of business people taking it to Henning or the other ones, but it would be kind of nice to know when theirs are going to shut up, because then it lets us know whether or not, how long is it going to be before we start seeing a lot more coming in and a lot more revenue.
Oops, sorry. Was that maybe the 6 to 7 years?
Well, it's twofold. You're asking what they have for a capacity, but when does the rule take place and where are they at in their permit?
Okay.
So there's a multi-prong, there's a lot of timing. If the rule was enacted tomorrow, the clock starts on that 4 to 7 year window. So there's just a lot of uncertainty in the industry right now. But your question to, identifying what they have for remaining, that's valid. I think it's more so important to where they're at, say in a permit, when that renewal would be and when the rule comes.
Yeah, because we would like to know what we're dealing with on the competition, because that was my concern when we started talking about doing this several years ago, is I think we did something where we asked a bunch of the contractors, I mean, is it worth it for you to pay them more and where you're saving time by just dumping it here? Or you feel it's worth it for you more financially to haul it down to Henning or haul it over to wherever other facilities are nearby at the cheaper rate until they are forced to do the same thing we do? So it would be kind of nice to get a really close idea of when they would be forced to do so.
What you're trying to price, and it's really difficult to do, is convenience. How do you put a value on
Convenience.
convenience?
Yeah.
That's I don't know if graphs and spreadsheets and charts or engineers can tell you that. It's,
I don't remember what the exact numbers was, but you guys estimated so much a year going into the landfill, and right now we're under that. And so is that because just less stuff is coming, or is it some of the people are saying, okay, we're gonna truck it over to Henning? And I'm trying to figure out, I mean, when would that kind of thing be eliminated?
I think we're fairly consistent on what we receive when we look at our dumping records. I mean, what comes in is up at the 14,000 cubic yards is
Okay.
what our charges are based on. But of course, when it gets into the cell and we compact it down, then we're compacting down into that 9,000 cubic yards.
Okay.
and when we do forecasts, we want to be conservative with that number when we're portraying that to the PCA. You don't want to, undershoot what it is and have, you are permitting both, capacity and footprint. So we don't want to be on the other side of that equation. We want to be strong from a permitting standpoint. So, you can
So
build
pretty
within your
much-
cycle.
Everything has pretty much stayed the same.
I-
People
I-
are more,
yeah.
contractors are more into the convenience versus the price.
Yeah, I think we're
Because they're going to
pretty
charge the
consistent.
consumer time. If you have to drive to Henning and back again, I mean, that's going to cost you more than paying an extra, well, equivalent of double cubic yard.
Yeah.
So,
But it's challenging to think about the business model, because there's not an incentive to have more business necessarily, because you're going to fill it up
Yeah,
quicker and
faster.
have higher expenses in a future
Yeah.
model. So I want to hear from the county, are there economies of scale at the county level? Are there different sites? There's transfer stations. They have more options than the city has. Ultimately, the city residents need a place that they can bring their solid waste, right? And then their demo. That's the ultimate goal for the city. We need to be able to do that as efficiently as possible. So I think conversations with the county would think about a plan in the
When
future.
we've talked about that with the county, we've talked about what does regionalization look like, where it's maybe multi-counties, and we are one of the hosts of that, rather than us bringing it somewhere else, if we are the host because we have the asset built here. That's some of the concepts we've talked about. And again, then it's even bigger than the city, it's bigger than the county, it's a number of counties on that regional basis.
So could we just ask staff to continue those conversations, bring us back, and then with a timeline in mind of when we need to make a decision, and just so the council has that opportunity to continue this discussion, knowing the staff is,
I think I'd like to think about it a little bit more and overall. But how long was the bond? Was it a 30-year bond or for
I think
the
it's 20.
20-year bond?
Yeah. and we bonded on the original construction back in 2011 as well.
Yep.
That built the building, all the roads, the other areas as well, so.
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not asking for a timeline on, like, I just want more information
No.
so we can continue this conversation
Yep.
and have staff, county engineering, Houston engineering, just, this is a big decision and it's a big discussion and we just need to make sure that we're all,
Equally, I would advocate that we need to do something before the permit expires. Because
Absolutely.
if you initiate it, then it's harder for the agency to change the rules, but they will change the rules if you haven't initiated it.
I typically don't, I believe that the city can do things more efficiently than larger government agencies as a typical rule, but I think with the MPCA setting guidelines and globalization as their goal, I think that there's a real possibility that we, as a city, might be better off to look at partnerships with other governmental agencies. But anyway, we can get that information and make those decisions as we go along. So this is just an update for now. Scott, did you have a last question?
Yeah, actually, just one. The initial map that you put together, this cell that we're talking about specifically here is actually only like, what, 1/6 of our total future capacity? This is something that's going to be possibly then re-permitted for the next cell, the next cell, the next cell. We could be looking at, how many years was it out? It was like
So-
80 more years of
I was
potential
going to bring
use.
that up. Within our expenses that we project also, we are required by our accounting standards to expense now as you take the waste in, so you match revenues and expenses. So as the waste comes in, we expense what we're going to have to do, and get this, if I get the year right, 2096, what facilities we will be building in 2096, and then how we'll care for this facility for 30 years after 2096. And we expense that based on the capacity that the entire place is filled up. So we're estimating we will reach 10% of that entire capacity by the end of this year. And you express that in current year dollars, and then next year when we revalue it, we put the inflation for that year into it. But that's what's called closure and post-closure. So when you ultimately close and after closure, thus post-closure, the care for that. And we're expensing that throughout. But 2096 is the date I'm using.
Jim, if you're still on the council in 2096, we're all in trouble.
I'll remember this meeting. Be Jim's head in a jar sitting on the desk.
All right, so there's more information to come on this, so.
One side note, and thus also with that next agenda item, this is why we didn't do utility rates this
Yes.
morning. We'll do that before council on Monday at 4:30. Also, what I just talked about, that closure, post-closure, under the old landfill, we were required to do that for that. We don't have a legal requirement to do that for this cell, but accounting standard says we should, and it is the responsible thing to do. So we're not legally required to do that, but we are.
All right, thank you. Thank you both. So with that announcement, as Bill mentioned.
Business item, too quick.
Yep, we have a new business item. Go ahead, Bill.
Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, let's do the new business item. We're going to start to lose
Okay.
people here, so.
Brian will talk briefly about this, but it's come up about a transportation alternatives grant.
Yes, Transportation Alternatives Grant, almost forgot. So Brian, do you want to talk about the bridge over 210 over the interstate and the city responsibility and how we might pay for that?
Okay.
I have an exhibit in there too. Yeah, there's due this Friday is a letter of intent for a transportation alternatives grant. If you recall, we're working with MnDOT on the Plan 2026 bridge replacement project at Trunk Highway 210-94. But we thought it was pertinent if you could scroll to just down a few more. Just want to show you, these are cost participation sheets showing that were presented to the city council for the municipal consent that took place earlier this spring. But I just want to note right here, areas in blue as shown on this map are 100% MnDOT funded. Areas in yellow are city portion funds, and there's a mixture. This is a Mabel Murphy's. I can't quite see, but it's a pro rata 60-30 about participation rate. Can I get to the next slide, please? So with a letter of intent for transportation alternatives is what I'm looking at. For the city's portion, I believe the trails is approximately 100,000 for the areas shown in yellow. So what I'm requesting is authorization to submit a letter of intent for this trail portion here that extends from 94 basically to Western Avenue, and these small portions of sidewalk kind of in the northeast corridor, so.
So moved.
Move second. So just to clarify, so this is the action that the council took in the spring, authorized this plan. The city has certain requirements as part of this, and this is funding that would help alleviate that.
Yes, this is, of our share, we're looking to use state aid funds, so with the transportation, we're looking to supplement our state aid funds, for just with the transportation alternative grant for the trail portions of this project.
And therefore, the state aid grant could be used for other street improvements throughout the city, presumably, if we were awarded these funds, correct?
Just for what I'm showing, yes.
Yeah, got it. So it's funding to help the city pay for this project that's already been approved and is under,
Under final design right now.
got it. Okay, thank you. So there's a motion to bring, to allow city staff to apply for the Transportation Alternatives Grant. There's a, Scott, did you say second? Is that right?
Yes, please.
Questions?
One quick comment that I'll make about the whole project. This last weekend, I went to a hockey game in Alexandria, and I took the first Alexandria exit, the Highway 100, and they have roundabouts on both sides of that bridge, and boy, it is awesome. So, go roundabouts.
All right, thanks. So there's a motion to bring this to the council on Monday night. Actually, no, is it? It's letter of intent to actually sign, to go ahead with this.
Authorize myself to submit the letter.
Got it, okay. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Bill. So you mentioned the Monday night, 4:30, there's a work session on the utility rates that we didn't get to this morning. Citywide pickup for leaves started about 2 hours and 15 minutes ago. Al's got an announcement, I know. He's got a big event tonight. Al, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to invite everyone to the town hall meeting tonight with Executive Director Dave Hengel from Greater Bemidji. He's going to speak and put on a presentation for about a half hour to 45 minutes, questions and answers afterwards. You could even talk about franchise tax, I think, ask them where their money is going to on theirs. So I would strongly encourage the Chamber and Greater Fergus Falls. I know that we've reached out to them too, and anyone here in the council. Thank you.
Thanks, Al. With nothing else to come before the council, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.